Alright, so I've been unwrapping this thing for a little while now with the other class. I got a few more things left. These are a bit more of the complicated things, but seems to be going okay. Should be done this soon. I'm going to do some bacon. So this guy was a bit, overwhelming at first. You kind of look at him. He's just, I mean, it's just an arm, but when I first flat map him, if it lets me go, come on, Max. Max. Seems like a lot of stuff, but it's not too bad. So typically what I do, I don't know if you guys watched any of the tutorials I did on there. On the right hand side up on the top there's these three little cubes, and it lets you select things by element in the viewport. So I'll typically just like start clicking and moving things apart just to help kind of organize myself and make things seem a little bit more manageable again, just kind of make like a task list for myself. Because this shit can get really crazy. So I'll kind of separate out all the different elements I have to work on, and then that way I can like focus on, hey, just this one, or whatever, and I kind of move on from there. This guy is still a little high poly, so I might just drop down. You can always, if you've started unwrapping stuff, you can always convert to an editable poly. It will keep that unwrap under there, so you'll never lose it unless you delete that modifier off your stack, but if you just collapse it, it'll be okay. So I have this like inset here from my high poly that I think I just kept. I don't really need it, so I'm going to use the little grow button, just do a plus selection there, and I'm going to hold control and click on the edges to convert that selection, and then I'll just remove that stuff. So the grow utility is really nice for just kind of expanding your stuff a little bit. I'll just kind of clean this up a little. And I might take a look at some other things here too. Sometimes you'll have faces that you left that are kind of just hidden underneath stuff. If you use your F2, that'll do like a shaded highlight for you. And that way you'll be able to see if you have any things that you are buried and just really don't need to exist anymore. So delete those guys out of the way. So I'm going to do a quick once over of this mesh, make sure that the things I got left are necessary. Might even remove that little dip, but whatever. How are these guys? You guys have some edges and things that don't really need to be there, but when you're in Edit Poly as well, if you guys haven't used it, in here there's also like a hide selected. So if you do have many elements, you could always just go hide unselected, and then just focus on specific elements if you have to edit them, because it does get to be a pain in the butt to deal with all those. So I'm going to do the same thing for this. I don't need this edge. And let's clean those up. If you have two similar objects, I might actually just, you know what I'm actually going to do? I'm going to, oh shit, not that. I'm going to unhide all. I'm going to detach one of these guys because I'm going to unwrap one guy and I'm going to put it over. I don't want to unwrap this thing twice. So I'm just going to detach this thing on the side. Call it like old. You should call things old if I want to throw them away. Yeah, that's mean. And I'm going to clean up this arm too, because I have a lot of edges here that aren't being used for absolutely anything. Yeah, there's lots of stuff in here. Yeah, these guys aren't doing anything. Even this thing's not doing anything. There we go, much better. Probably gonna keep this one edge just so I have a place to merge all these guys too. Sometimes it's okay to keep kind of useless edges for like cleanliness sake, just so I'll have something to attach these guys to. So I have this edge right here. As far as modeling wise, he's completely useless. But I'm going to keep him there so I could merge all these guys in, or like attach them to here instead of having to attach them across this big face. Not really necessary, but sometimes big, long faces with long edges like that just kind of bother me, so I'll keep them around, but not overly necessary. I'm going to get rid of these guys because they're not doing shit. Again, remember, for your low poly, tries are okay. There's nothing wrong with tries. That's not connected for some reason. And again, these edges are completely useless. These middle ones here, they were here just to help me center things and model things, but this is completely doing nothing for my low poly as far as form goes. If I remove these, it's not, my mesh is going to look no different. So that's the kind of stuff you want to optimize if you're kind of still going through optimizing things. Sometimes I'll make a low poly and optimize it, and when I'm unwrapping, I'll find just new things that I just forgot to remove or get rid of. Same with this middle edge here. It's there because I used it to inset this stuff, but now it's just kind of cutting all these edges in the center. Completely, useless, not useful for anything. So I'm going to make sure I don't remove any crucial edges like those ones. And then I just remove that. And then same with this guy. There we go, much cleaner. Alright, back to unwrapping. And because I collapsed my stuff, all my unwraps are still here from before. Some of them might look a little sillier. If you're ever working, like if you ever detach these things like elements, or not even detach them, just separate them out like this, and you find your stuff is like really separated further apart, just do another mapping, flat map, just on the selected objects there, and it'll kind of bring them closer so these, they're all somewhat together. And don't worry about scale, we'll fix scale once we're actually packing everything. But sometimes I like to do that, just kind of flat map things together. This arm is the most bananas one, so I'm going to leave that to later. Oh, shit. So, I'm kind of glad this happened. If you ever get this, don't freak out. It just means that you hid some elements in your mesh, and you forgot to unhide them, but then you added an unwrap modifier on there. The cool thing is, even if you have edges or like faces and elements hidden, all your seams and stuff will still show up. So you kind of get this kind of sweet, like mechanical looking view of it, and I kind of really like it. But you can always just collapse your stuff. Go into here and just do an unhide all, and then your stuff will come back. So I remember the first time that happened to me, I was totally freaked out. I'm like, where the shit is this coming from? It can also happen if you go to if you make a box or whatever. This is the one that got me once too. So let's say you're modeling something, and you have like another element. You've like been working on it and stuff, and for whatever reason you like remove all your edges from it, but then you go into vert mode. Oh, it actually kept them. There's a way where you can like keep all your verts but remove all your faces, and so you can't see them while you're working in like normal view mode, but then you'll be able to see just a bunch of verts. And I don't quite know how it happens, but sometimes you'll get like a box made out of verts, but there's no faces connecting them.
I remember accidentally doing that.
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Because then you like unhide stuff, or you go into vert mode and there's just like an object here just made out of dots, and you're like, where the hell? Yeah, I can't even replicate it.
I remember what's it called? I think it's if you delete all the lines to it, but not like Like the
Not
difference
like
between
control.
the
Yeah.
flat.
Yeah, you can just get like all these floaters, and it's friggin' weird. What's kind of cool? What's happening here? Oh yeah, I forgot I did this. Oh, I got little tiny wee edges in here that are completely useless to the world. So there we go. God. If you get weird smoothing groups like this and it bothers you just while you're working, you can always throw a smooth modifier on there. Throw auto smooth on and just like lower the smoothing threshold a little bit. Just clean it up. It doesn't really, I mean, it just fixes your smoothing groups. We're going to mess up these smoothing groups by the end anyways for baking, but sometimes it just bothers me while I'm working just to see stupid shading like that. It's picky. Okay, back to adventure here. Yeah, so I'm going to leave this arm thing for later because it's really complicated. So I'm going to do one of these guys and then I'll copy them over because I deleted the other one. Oh, cool. This is a fun little accident too. So if you notice, sometimes you'll like unwrap stuff or flat map stuff, and you grab a face and you're like, that doesn't look like that face. This one's really like wide and this one's kind of thin. It's because I forgot to X-form this thing before I added a UV unwrap modifier to it. I don't know if you guys remember, I kind of showed it in the beginning of this course, but if you scale an object, so I'm going to make a perfect cube. And I'm going to use the scale tool. I'm going to scale it out really, really wide. I'm going to throw an unwrap modifier on it. And if I flat map it, I get cubes. Unwrap doesn't care about scale that you apply unless you X-form it. So I think that's what happened to those little guys. I think I scaled them upwards, but never X-formed them. So the unwraps just don't understand that they've actually been scaled. So what I'm going to do is just do a reset X-form. And flat map them. That looks a little better. It's still kind of wide looking, but I think that's better. Sometimes you get it really like exaggerated. I probably just scaled them up a little bit. But anyways. Alright, so I got these two guys. These two side faces are probably just going to stay on their own. And then I'm going to have, so sometimes you might get something like this where you're like, yeah, I got this. Well, I have these little inside bits, but they're so small I don't really need them to be separated. I can deal with a bit of like stretching and distortion and stuff like that. So what I might do is I might just select that inside piece, do a grow on it just to get that whole bit, maybe another grow to do all of that. And that way I have this whole thing. I might deselect these. Oh shit. Deselect those guys. So I might want this just to be like one unwrap together. And I don't want to stitch all these things by hand because it'd be a pain in the ass. So I'm going to select them all. They're attached right now to other things that Max decided to attach them to. So I'm just going to hit D to detach them. And I'm going to use the projection mapper here just to do a flat planar unwrap. Now it's going to do a really shit job because it's on an angle. But all I'm looking for when I do a flat map sometimes, or like a planar map like this, I just want to get rid of all of my seams that I had. So now when we look at this, if we look at it before, seams on the outside, inside, right, all the green lines there. And then when I do a quick flat map, it's shit, but it got rid of all of my seams, right? It said, okay, all of these things are stitched together. And what that will allow me to do is do a quick peel on it. Now, peels kind of suck because they're going to move all my shit out of the way again, right? So if you don't want that to happen, you could always kind of do it manually and do pelt. And so I'm going to do start pelt, start relax, and commit. And what this has done for me is it's taken all of the seams that I set up, which in this case have been none except for the absolute outside, and it's tried to find the best possible way to average out all the distortion across this thing. So if we put on a checker pattern, you'll see I have some distortion on the outside, kind of like going out. a little bit of squiggles in here, but for the most part, it's pretty decent, right? It's kind of like a nice mix of everything. And I mean, really, if I wanted to, I could kind of push this out a little bit more and try and, control where this distortion happens. Doing more of this will get less distortion on the outside, more on the inside, so kind of up to you where you want to do that. But this sort of unwrap is nice for things like this, like really kind of complicated things with lots of edges and kind of changes. You want to keep them as much together as you can sensibly, and kind of be okay with certain amount of seams and distortion. It's kind of a pick and choose game for you of what you want to distort and what you want to leave clean. But now that we have this guy, I can select my edge up here, which is this one there, and just start stitching things to it. And really, I mean, this is okay. Most of the other things are hidden. Sometimes you'll notice as you're working on things that, let's see, I'm going to do the same thing for the bottom here. Manually select all these faces, do a quick planer on them, and then do a pelt, start pelt, relax pelt, go. Now I have all these guys here. Where the hell are these things? So I'm going to look in there. And they're buried inside my mesh. Even that top guy there, yeah, I guess he's kind of needed. The bottom one isn't, though. So I have all these faces that are now inside a mesh that a player will never see. They're just wasting space and are just really, there's no need for them. So the nice thing I can do is when I have these guys selected as faces in my unwrap modifier, while they're selected, if I just convert this thing to an editable poly, and I go to my face select here, it will have them all still selected. And it'll kind of convert from a UV select to a face select, and that way I could go here and just delete them all. So it's a nice kind of quicker way of isolating your things out there and doing all that. So I can make a few choices as well. I know that this whole face isn't visible. I probably only need like half of it, and I could probably just merge it down here, and I could just delete all these guys. Just a little bit of optimization. And then let's take a look at the front here because I deleted those faces. This might look a little silly. I think I probably don't need those guys there. It's probably not that big of an angle. And then I'm going to just go through and clean it up now that I understand what my unwrap needs from this mesh. Alright, that's all pretty good. Alright, back to the unwrap. Okay, so I have those guys. These things are done. I can probably stitch them to the tops of this. Yeah, something like that. Might even decide that that seam is more important to me than some extra distortion. Oh, the storm is back. Might have been thunder. There was some mad thunder this morning. It was awesome. Scared the shit out of my dog. He was outside, then he started running around trying to help my other dog. It was very confusing. Hopefully he doesn't get thunder and humping locked in together. It's going to be terrible storms from now on. Alright, so I have this mesh over here. This is just the bottom one, so I'm just going to stitch these guys together. So I will have a straight line from that, and then a rim there. I'm just going to put the seam in the center because he's not really that overly interesting. So it'll be that, and then so that part's done. This guy's pretty crazy here, so I'm going to start with this little guy here. So what I might decide is that this whole ring plus the top part, so this guy plus this bottom part, I don't really want a seam here. He's not very deep, so I could probably do with a bit of stretching. So what I might do is where is it? I know there's a plus and minus in here somewhere too, isn't there? Grow. Nope. Fine. Fine, I'll do this one. Oops. So I'm going to select that. Grow. I'm going to remove that. So I want both of these guys to be kind of stitched together as one mesh. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do my projection map. And sometimes projection does, when you have stuff on an angle, sometimes it doesn't do a good job of trying to get things down flat for some reason. So, you know, if none of these will work for me, obviously not that one. Well, Z works well. Even this is just like average aligned. That one will work decently well. So I'm just going to do a straight down align. So now you're going to notice one thing that I've done to my mesh, and that's stretch the shit out of these sides, right? They're stretched as hell, which is a big no-no. It's not actually what I want. So I could do two things. I could select this mesh here, and I could go to Tools and Relax, and just hit Relax, and hit Apply a couple times, and it will try and do an average. So I'm going to get some weird kind of stretching-ish here, because all these guys, if we look at these faces here, they are perfect squares, right? More or less. I mean, they're parallel to each other. And what I've done with them here is, because I've stretched them out on an angle, they're all kind of coming outside. So they no longer represent their geometry kind of form in the unwrap. But I'm going to say that's fine, because what this is going to give me is it's going to give me 0 seams in this entire little thing. The difference between the top and the side is going to be nice and clean for my bake. And yeah, I'm going to get a bit of weird kind of distortion on the side, but that's okay. For what this is, I would rather have a nice clean edge here and have it nice and shiny from spec and stuff like that, than have less distortion. So it's kind of, you know, you'll have to kind of decide what you think is best. And unfortunately, sometimes you won't know until you bake your shit and it looks weird. But that's okay. That's part of what we're doing here too. So I'm going to do the same thing to this other guy. I'm going to do a plus, and I'm going to remove that selection. Z. Always, if you ever use projection, the one shitty thing about it, or annoying thing about it, is once you have this on, you are in projection mode. So you can hit, you know, whatever angle you want to project, unwrap this thing to. But you can't go through and do anything else until you click out of projection mode. So if you ever get stuck and you're frustrated because you don't know what the hell's going on, you're probably in projection mode. If you guys haven't watched my video, what a projection mode does is it just takes whatever shape you decide and tries to unwrap to that shape. So if you do a plane, it's going to put like a little yellow plane around all your objects, and then you're going to decide which angle to kind of align that plane to. So whether it's on the X, the Y, or the Z, it'll just do a straight up projection grab. If it's a weird bunch of angles, let's say if you're going to do this face and this face together for whatever reason, there's a best align, which will then kind of try and average the two angles between that, which is nice and handy if you're doing like a funky kind of thing there. There's also a view align, so if you want to like line up your camera and project straight out from your camera, you can do that as well. There's also a couple nice things in here as well. You can do, let's just select a few things here. If we have all this, if it was like a messed up unwrap, you could do projection and cylinder, and it put a really great cylinder on there for me. you could hit Z and have it align. So it will try and do its best to do a cylindrical unwrap for you, which is pretty nice. So you can do a sphere one for some friggin' reason, or a cube one. I basically never use any of them except for plane, sometimes cylinder, but it comes in handy here and there. So so let me undo a bunch of this. All right, and so which ones were we doing? We're doing the bottom one. Oh, I screwed that up. Oh yeah, okay, no, I don't want to do a projection map on this because this thing is like crazy long. Oops. That's fine. Sometimes, you know, if it's a small angle, you could do a little bit of distortion on it, like that bottom bit, but this top one is actually not very good for it because it's pretty long and mighty. That's way too long to do on an angle out. So I'm going to do a cylinder projection on that guy. And this thing can stay as a ring, that's fine. And then on the top here we have all these things here. And Max, by default, by flat mapping, separated out all the edges. I'm just, again, going to do a projection map from the top and then do a relax on there. And this guy's really long. So if you do, let's say, like I did a cylinder unwrap on this thing, you notice that the squares that I have here are really squished. So Max doesn't, when it does the projection stuff, it doesn't really pay attention to scale very well. So you'll have to go through and then take your stuff and then squish it to make the squares the proper proportions. And then we have the center bit here. It did just like little chunk unwraps, so I could just stitch them manually. Now the other thing when you're doing things like cylinders, your cylinder is just going to have a seam right down the center at some point. I mean, there's just no way to get rid of that. So it's, you know, my seam is right here, this purple guy. For you, you're going to have to make a choice where that seam goes, and ideally you want to place it as far away from or in the least place the player is able to look at it, right? So if they can see it 10% of the time, that's better than 50% of the time. And when Max unwraps like cylinders for you, it's not really going to care where it puts the seam by default. So you're going to have to kind of decide where to do that, and you can do that by just taking a few. So I know I want my seam right here, so I'm going to take these guys, detach them, and just stitch them over to the other side, and just move where that seam goes. Okay, so we have that. Now we have this big behemoth motherfucker here. Alright, so I flat mapped him, and he is pretty crazy. He's going to definitely need some adjustments here. This is way too many pieces, right? So I got to try and stitch as much of this as I can. By default, right by the start, I'm just going to basically do the whole top there because they're all very like shallow angles. And I'm just going to deselect a bunch of that. So I'm basically going to just project map this whole top bit here because it's perfectly fine the way it is. Hey, that actually did a pretty good job. Sometimes when you do a projection map, it like smushes something into a square, and then you get really bad proportions out of it. This one actually did a really good job. It's doing this crazy shit though. Check that out. I've never seen that before.
Oh.
Cool, eh? That sounds like a crash coming up. Alright, and I'll do the same thing for this bottom bit here. Alright. Okay, then I gotta stitch all of this shit together. meshes. Maybe I'll just do this one manually just to preserve some of this. Nah, maybe not. Alright, let's try projection. And then let's do a pelt. Start pelt, start relax. Oh, it's doing crazy things. Okay, so it does not like the length of this thing. Sometimes you gotta do smaller pieces. There we go. Start pelt, start relax. And then you can stitch them. I was showing the other class this. This is quite a nice little feature in Unwrap too. Sometimes you have meshes that are on like slight angles, like this guy here, and you want to line them up so they're nice and straight, especially for packing and just for whatever. Instead of trying to eyeball it, what you can do is you can select one of the edges that you want to be perfectly straight at, and there's a little tool up here, it's just a little cube on an angle called Align to Edge. Usually this works, sometimes it goes terribly wrong. But it will try and align your mesh to that edge. So at least that edge that you have selected will be perfectly flat and will align that whole element to it. Again, really nice. So this one too, he's on like a slight askew here. So I just select that and he'll try his best to try and move it there. So it's nice, again, if you're running into little problems where your shit's on like a angle and all that. Alright, so what do we have left for this thing? We got this under part here. Alright. That goes to there. So I'm probably going to leave that one there because that's a pretty good place for a seam. And then where does this go? Oh shit, it's got like some random triangles I must have selected. Do the same thing for the side there and there. Oops. Oops. I'll flat map those out of the way and just stitch them back in here. There we go. I hate when this stuff on an angle like that. Sometimes when you stitch things together, they'll kind of come in on an angle just because the geo here is just like on a slight angle. If you flatten this out first, it will prevent it from doing that, and you got to do that on the other side too. Now it'll come in relatively straight. Alright, let's see what's happening over here. Alright, that's getting sort of crazy, so let's just stop there for now. Select these two guys, just attach them. just going to force these guys into this shape here. Might have a little bit of distortion, but it's okay. Alright, arm is done. Now, before I could actually call it finished, I'm going to have to duplicate that one little arm that I did as well.
So that carries over the UPW map and you just copy it over?
Yeah. So sometimes if you have like multiple of the same object, this thing's unwrapped forever basically. It has its own unwrap and it's separate. Like each element, each face really carries its own coordinate system of where that face is on that square area. So once you, I'm just going to copy him over here. All right, position him there. Clone, and then I can just delete this old one. I just kind of kept them there for reference, just so I know where to put them. And then, if we go back to our unwrap modifier, what will happen is because I copied them over, they're going to be in the exact same place over top of each other, which when you're doing like your final bake is not a good thing, but at this point it doesn't matter because eventually what we're going to do is we're going to take all these things and pack them, and then it's going to like split them up anyways because it knows they're part of one mesh. They can't be overlapped when you pack them like that. So so it's good. So if you have like an array of a bunch of boxes or clamps or something like that, just unwrap one and then reposition them. Sometimes like once you guys get the hang of this workflow and get it all done, later on when you're actually modeling your low polys, you'll be like, oh, I need to reposition this thing a bunch of times. I'm going to unwrap it now, right? Sometimes you can like take a break, unwrap a small thing just because you know you're going to duplicate it. No point like duplicating it, then going to an unwrap, deleting a bunch of them, duplicating it again. That's what I would have done with this thing, but it's just one of those things you got to kind of keep in mind while you're working. Hey, there's a Dragonite in the gym next to us. Sorry, that was, I know, I'm sorry, that was a very dick move. I do that to my girlfriend all the time. I'm like, oh shit, a Charizard. She doesn't believe me anymore. I see a real Charizard, she's not gonna believe me. And then I'm gonna have a Charizard, she's gonna be totally jelly. It's gonna be great. We caught a Pikachu during the week though, that was pretty exciting. He was just like in our house. And then I caught one. Oh man, look at this sweet unwrap. It's beautiful. I don't know, what the hell? Oh, it's these things? I don't even understand what it did. Look at all these seams. It's amazing. Sometimes Max just does some crazy shit. It tried to do something. Alright, so same thing. I'm going to start off by selecting some elements. Namely, I guess it's just these two things. Excuse me. And then the rest of this is all one, so do some cylinders first. Oh, hey, these guys are looking crazy. So I'm just going to really roughly just stitch all these guys together. Or let us see if we can do something about this. Select all these guys, go to projection, to cylinder. It's on an angle, so it's not really, oh no, best align. I did a pretty good job. There we go. Now let's take a look at what the actual chart looks like. Might need a bit of smushing. Okay, so let me show you guys something too that you may run into. Sometimes when you do cylinder unwraps, it doesn't actually stitch everything for you properly. Sometimes when you guys do like spline unwraps or cylinder unwraps or things that Max like kind of auto unwraps for you, you may notice if you throw a grid on something, I take a look at this and I'm like, yeah, this is a fairly decently unwrapped cylinder, in the UV editor, it looks nice and clean. But when I look at it here, some of these shapes do not actually represent the kind of proportions and scales of what they are in the real world. So, you know, if we take a look at this, all these squares are fairly square, more or less. But then these guys in here are really squished. And so if I click on this, we'll see here that it's really long compared to this, right? This one's kind of short and stubby, but this square here is really long. So Max has just decided that that the scale is just messed up, right? So a lot of times what you can do is kind of select the things above or below it. I'm going to select all these faces. And instead of scaling or doing anything like that, I'm just going to move these guys down until those squares are kind of the same proportion. And then same with this. If these guys I find are, again, a little too long, I can select all of the faces above or below it and then move them down. In the unwrap editor, like in Photoshop and other things, if you hold Shift, it will lock you to up, down, left, right. So, I mean, you could also hover over the X and Y, but if you're doing like both things, Shift will kind of lock you into one or the other, or you just highlight yourself over the arrows. So whichever way you like it.
How do you get the arrows to show up?
These guys.
Yeah.
So I use this thing here. I use the freeform tool, and just usually when you select something, it should show up. Yours doesn't do that.
No.
And you're on that freeform mode?
Yeah.
Oh, that might be a 2017 thing. 2016, I think you just had to hover over the red.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that is an update. All right, so we got that, and we got those two end things that it did a pretty good job unwrapping. And so I'm going to do the same thing to this guy here. So the way I unwrapped this last time is I actually used the projection cylinder. And I did best align, so because this monitor is on a weird angle, X, Y, and all that will not work. They'll try and do this. It'll look really stupid. That's X, that's Y. But best align did a really good job of actually picking this thing and putting it into place. All right. All right. Let's see how the UVs look there. Probably needs to be stretched out a little bit. I like that. This guy. Okay. So we got that, and now we got this whole fucking monstrosity. But like everything else, as long as you kind of think of it systematically, start trying to break it down bit by bit. The other thing you should think about when you're breaking apart your meshes and where to pick seams is to start thinking about how you're going to texture this thing. So with this monitor, I know that this inside part is going to be a screen, and this outside part is going to be, you know, metal or plastic or something like that. So the change in elements here is a good place for a seam. You know, I don't want to. I would rather have a seam in between the screen and the plastic than try and merge these two guys together and have that like as a seamless addition, and then have a seam right there. So do your best at trying to remember or think about what you're going to unwrap your stuff to, or paint, or whatever it is. Because that might influence where you select things and stuff too. So, all right, so that screen is done. We can move them out of the way. Then I'm going to select this whole thing and these inside bits here. Alright, so I'm going to do just a quick projection, best align, and see if relax. Sometimes when you try and do this and you hit relax, relax will do its best job trying to even out distortion. Sometimes it can make things worse. And you got to know that where you want that distortion. So if we look at it here, this is just a planar map. These inside edges are a little bit stretched because just the way the planar map kind of did it. And if I hit relax, what it's going to do is it's warping the actual shape of this screen. Right? It's kind of making it go in and out. And it might average out some of the distortion here, but it's making things on weird angles. And again, things on angles will not render as nice, so try and keep things as, 90, 45 degree as possible. So sometimes you got to take the hit of having distortion in certain places in lieu of straight lines. So it's kind of, again, a balancing game, which is all of unwrapping. It's just decisions. You're basically kind of like deciding which of your puppies you want to shoot all the time.
Okay.
That's all unwrapping is. It's a really dark time in your life where someone's just making you say, well, which one do you like more? I like this face more. We'll shoot the other one. More or less. Maybe something a little happier. But definitely puppy shooting. I was telling the other class, I don't know if you guys read the news, but there's this hospital in India. There's a bunch of people working there, and they had this scam going. I don't know what you want to call it. It's much worse than a scam. When people gave birth to a baby, they would steal their baby and replace it with a dead baby that they got, and then they would tell the parents, like, hey, sorry, your baby died, and then they would sell the live baby to people that were looking to adopt for anywhere from $600 to $3,000. Yeah, that's all it took. So it's pretty messed up that people in the world, have that shitty of a life that that's what they have to resort to.
Pay for that together, like.
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
meet
somebody.
together and be like, you know what? I have this idea. It might sound crazy.
Here we have it.
It's probably like
definitely
everything
crazy.
started. Somebody said as a joke, right? You're like, dude, we should totally steal this person's baby and replace it with that dead one. Like, we have a pile of dead babies.
Well, that's
We
how I
could
love
just,
that one.
yeah.
It's India. We have a pile of them.
Yeah. They won't even notice. Come on. This is like their 5th time
Dude, it'll
here
be
this week.
hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, it'll be hilarious.
Dude, where's my baby?
Yeah. Too far, man. That movie was terrible. No, yeah, it was probably like the darkest thing I read in a long time. Like, I read about I don't know if you guys read about the harvesting organ stuff in China that they found out about. They were basically just killing prisoners so Americans can come over and get organ transplants. Not just Americans, but other rich countries.
It sounds like a sci-fi movie.
It really does. So organ tourism, it's called, or transplant tourism, I forgot. I think it's organ tourism. It's a pretty big thing because here in like Canada and the States, like to get on a waiting list to get an organ takes forever, right? So in other countries, if you have the money, they will let other people die and do a surgery for you. And so then people in China were like, hey, cool, we could just find ways to get more organs. We could make a lot more money. So they were going to prisons and they were like, hey, who don't you like? And we like, well, we don't really like this race of people, so you can just take them all. And
Take them all.
yeah, and
You know,
so
why not?
because China's like communist and stuff, so they weren't really reporting all this stuff, obviously.
Yeah.
But I guess they have like a certain health organization thing, and they were reporting their like rates of transplants, and they're like, so the people that we talk to in the world, the amount of people getting transplants in China does not equal the amount you guys are telling us. So then they went out and found out that this shit was happening. They're like, no, the prisoners, like, they consented to having their organs taken. And they're like, okay, yeah, maybe these, like, 100 inmates, but what about these, like, 2,000 inmates that just disappeared? They're like, don't worry about it.
They just disappeared.
They're
They'll
fine.
come back.
Yeah.
Look it over.
China is pretty big, guys, all right? I'm sure they're out there somewhere.
Last thing you want to hear from a prison is, yeah, we don't know where they are.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty weird stuff. That baby replacement was fuck though. That was a weird ass read.
Yeah, could imagine.
Yeah, so they arrested the people that were doing this after a while, but now anyone from that hospital, I think they named the hospital that they were working on. Everyone's just anybody who had a baby die there. They're like, it might be alive somewhere. That'd be really weird. Some American is just raising this baby they bought for $600. It's fucked. It was stupid. Where'd my mesh go? There it is. Anyways, plus the Olympics are happening. That's something.
Oh, like, no, yeah.
On a lighter note.
Slightly lighter now.
Slightly, yeah.
There's lots of muggings and
Yeah.
doping and all that fun
Oh,
stuff.
I really the point to say, like, I kind of just encompasses, like, the feel of this Olympics. A Chinese athlete, like, 2 hours getting into, 2 hours getting into Rio, he was, like, mugged and, like, thrown up on by a homeless guy.
Really, eh?
Yeah,
Oh.
like, it was a team effort. Like, the one guy threw up on him and his buddy came and grabbed his bags from him.
Oh, that was like their plan, eh?
Yeah,
Oh.
the same guy
Cool.
who was, his bus was, like, caught in, like, a gang shootout kind of
Oh
thing.
shit.
Yeah.
I heard about the one photographer who got there and like immediately had all his equipment stolen. There's a really creepy video if you guys want to watch it. It's not that creepy, it's just really weird. And it's just various whatever iPhone videos of people getting mugged in Brazil. But it's such a nonchalant thing. Like this one lady was walking with her headphones and her phone. This guy walked up and just pulled out the earbuds and took it and she just went like, yeah. Here you go. People just walking up and like following people and trying to grab their phones out of their hands, and people are like, "What are you doing?" And they just keep following them until they did it. It's crazy. It's just like, and then the guy would just walk around the corner and sit at a fountain, look at all the phones he collected, and no one would do anything about it because there's way more like criminals, I guess, than people. So
Way more criminals than people.
yeah, yeah. But it's okay. They have money to have the Olympics, so it's fine.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's all good. We got Olympics now.
And you see, like, the diving pool they have there?
The green
The
one?
green one,
Yeah, did they ever say what happened to it?
They closed it down. It started to, like, smell like sewage.
That's
But-
awesome. I can't believe they still make people dive in it. Like, no, you are going. Did they ever say, like, what happened to it? Was it just sewage?
No, I'm not sure. I didn't read that part of it.
Because I heard, like, some people were like, I hope they put something in there to, like, reduce, like, poison
It's
or
closed down
glare.
now.
But, yeah, it wasn't a good thing.
I guess like, the people who are like sailing too, like that water, like if they ingested like there's like 5 tablespoons worth, they have like an 80% chance of like catching a virus or something.
Yeah, I read that too.
Like it was like the same course where like the guys mapping out like their boat hit a couch.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's amazing. Yeah,
I heard.
what an amazing Olympics. So why were you disqualified, or why didn't you win gold? I had a fucking couch.
I hit a couch. Underwater couch.
Yep. Damn, Olympics are getting tough. It's crazy obstacles. Yeah, I read about the sewage thing. So they said in California, they were using California as a metric for some reason. They said the parts per million in the water there that they would deem hazardous was like in like the thousands, so like 1 to 3,000. They would start telling people, like, yeah, I mean, you're not gonna die, but you might get whatever diarrhea or something, right? It's hazardous. You should probably not swim in there. In Brazil, in the boat area, it was like 3 billion parts per million or something like that for whatever. It was like ridiculous, just a ridiculous amount of trash. But it's fine.
I remember a while back.
It's fine.
Niagara Falls was like declared the world's smelliest town.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah,
awesome.
Because like starting with the sewage and it just poured out, but like the smell of it fumigated like through the like drainage.
Oh,
It's true. It smelled horrible for
Really,
a
eh?
long time.
that sucks. They fixed it up.
Spent a lot of time inside.
I went swimming in Lake Ontario last week. I've never been. I thought it was gonna be really gross, but like I checked all the water conditions and it was totally fine. It was really nice. It was like really clear and crazy warm.
Or was it Port Boozy?
We were gonna go to Port, but then there was Beer Fest there, so there was a lot of people. So we ended up going to Charles Daly, which is whatever, a few kilometers down off the QE. But yeah, it was really nice. Took my dog swimming for the first time. He had no idea what the fuck was happening. He had no idea what waves were. It was amazing. He tried to swim like a dolphin. He would just jump up and fall back in the water. That was really great.
My thing crashed.
You what?
My file crashed,
Yeah,
and I think it saved a backup copy.
yeah.
Do you know where that would go?
Yes, it's under My Documents, 3D Max, Autoback. and then sort your AutoBack files by time.
Okay, there
Yeah,
it is, yeah.
sweet.
Alright, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, I don't know why it decides to put those in my documents as opposed to like the 3D Max directory, but that's where she goes.
So glad.
I'm actually starting to get pissed.
Why? What's happening?
This is making me very mad.
You're watching the Olympics?
No, I'm trying. Oh yeah, and no, I'm trying to freaking. Why are you? I'm trying to cut something. Never mind. I should disconnect. My bad.
Alright, well, let me know if that doesn't work. Yeah, cut can be good and bad. It's definitely hit and miss. Alright, so I'll show you guys something in a second here. So sometimes with unwrapping, again, you got to be okay with making a big mess to get rid of one problem. So I have all these faces that I had for these dips here, and I want to just have this all as one mesh, even if I'm going to get a bit of stretching and stuff. It's fine. So there's lots of seams here, like it just kind of made all these faces separate on the flat map. So what I did is I just stitched them all together, just haphazardly. I didn't give a shit how, as long as there was no green lines here. So it looks like garbage here on this right-hand side. So if you take a look at all of these here, they're all just kind of like skewed down and just not looking really great, right? We got lots of skewing over here. What you can do as well, if you have, the rest of this mesh is fine. I really like how it is. I just really hate how this inside part looks. I'm going to select all these verts. With those selected, I could go to relax and just relax my selection. And it will do its best to try and even that stuff out. So if you ever are running into a problem, and it did a pretty good job, and I'm still getting a little bit of skewing here and there, but it did a pretty nice job. So if you have something inside your mesh that you just aren't happy with, especially when you're working on characters or something really organic, select like 4 or 5 verts in an area that just has like general like skewiness, and what this will do is it will just try and average out all of that distortion amongst the verts that you have selected, and usually it does a pretty nice job. Sometimes it doesn't, but most of the time it does a pretty good job. Alright, so I'm going to attach these guys here on the side. Same thing, first I'm just going to attach. So I make shortcuts for your stuff, right? So stitch selected and then space. And again, just be a robot when you're unwrapping. Just nice and quick. And then I'm going to do 0.5 on this guy.
So is that a shortcut for space?
Space is just to get rid of the dialogue, like just to hit enter. Just when this thing comes up, you just hit space, and by default OK is selected. Yeah, so that way you can do it like really nice and quick. And the nice thing is, when you change this bias, it'll stay that bias until you change it again. So right now I need it to be 0.5 to average these guys out. So every time I hit stitch selected, it'll stay 0.5. If I change it to 1, next time I do it, it'll be at 1. So it's kind of nice. It does remember what your last input was. And then, yeah, just stitch selected, enter, and just power through it. And then you can select all your verts. And if you guys, I don't know if I showed you guys last class or if it was the tutorial I did, but up here under Quick Transform, there is these 2 plus signs and an arrow underneath, and then an arrow beside and 2 plus signs beside it. These are vertices. What this will do is it'll horizontally or vertically align whatever you have selected. So I have this whole row of verts here, and I want it to be perfectly straight. So I can select them all and hit this vertically aligned thing, and it'll just smush them all, average them all together into a straight line. A lot of unwrapping is all about just averaging your problems. All right, there we go. Now, most of this is looking pretty good. I got to do this inside part here, which is probably going to look really weird once I start stitching it. But again, sometimes, oh shit. You know what, this thing's pretty deep. I'm probably going to actually do it as a separate. Actually, you know what, maybe I'll do, yeah, I'll do it as a separate little object off to the side. Sometimes you have to decide. So like these big dudes that I did up on here, they're fairly deep, but they're also very wide, so I decided to kind of just merge them all in here. This thing's deep, but also really like shallow, so I think I'm just gonna do that as a separate object, because I think the amount of distortion I would get trying to fit it into this little space would just be too much. So sometimes you gotta just be okay with, you know, being like, fuck it, I'm gonna select this. Just select all these inside parts here. And I'm just gonna flat map them separately, just so they're organized. And I'm just going to unwrap them, stitch them all on their own here. Oh, that's sideways. Let me try doing a pelt on this thing first. Let's see how it looks. So I'm going to go here, projection map, just do a planar, just to get rid of all the seams. And well, it actually did a nice little, well, I guess not really, because it did that part there. I can always project those two. Well, let's see what pelt map will do. Did a pretty good job, more or less. Bless you.
Thank
Yeah, I did a pretty good job. It's kind of a weird shape, but I'll leave it. It's kind of tucked away anyways. Not a big deal. Alright, we got the screen. What else we got left? We got this rim here, and we got this. This is attached to the screen. Yeah, let's attach it to this bottom bit here. And then we have these guys here. Alright, these guys can stay separate. And then these guys I will project map and relax. Might have to do them on their own, because when I try and do an average between the two, it's like, oh, yuck. Alright, let's pelt these guys, because the projection mapping is not doing a good job. Booyah. Love pelt mapping, it just looks so nice. Start pelt, relax pelt, commit. And we're done. So I'm gonna get some stretch in there, but I should get some really nice angles or like corners there. And let's convert this guy. And finally, my friggin' monitors are done. Well, I guess that's not true. I still have some cables and stuff to do, but I'm not gonna do those later. Alright, so that's done. We'll take a look at